Okay. So then in 2001, you represented Mike Tyson.
I received a phone call from a lawyer friend in Arizona who was Mike Tyson's lawyer. And he said to me, they're thinking of charging Mike Tyson with rape in San Bernardino County. And a woman has come forward claiming she was raped. Gloria Allred, the famous attorney in Los Angeles, has already agreed to represent her. They've already given a press conference. Would you be California counsel on the defense team? And I said I would. And we put together a booklet which had a number of investigative materials that we quickly got together to convince the San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office that Mike had not raped anybody or assaulted anybody. And that included information on the alleged victim. And we presented this booklet to the DA's office, and they agreed not to prosecute.
Right, because this comes off the heels of Tyson's conviction for rape in 1992.
He had already been, yes, he had already been to prison.
Yeah, he did 3 years.
He'd already been convicted, which I must say, the more I look at what happened in that courtroom, the more suspicious it looks. I mean, I think you probably know that he was convicted after the defense presented evidence that a young woman had gone up to his hotel room at 2 a.m. and apparently they'd been making out in a limousine, as I understand it. And I question whether he should have been convicted at all in that case. But he was convicted. He went to prison. He came out. And now another woman was trying to claim that he committed a sexual assault. And we were able to convince the San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office there was no case at all.
Now, was this your first celebrity client?
Well, I'd represented some people in the entertainment business in the 90s before that. I'd been consulted by some well-known people, I won't mention who they are, when they had problems, but he was probably the highest profile person I had agreed to defend at that point. Yes.
So were you and Mike Tyson communicating during this time?
I was communicating through his team in Arizona.
Got it. And, I mean, you got his case dropped.
They didn't charge him.
Yeah.
And you would, given the fact that he was a target, that he'd already been convicted, which could make a subsequent conviction easier for a prosecutor, I think we did a very good job in convincing them there was no case.
So you said that many celebrities have an unrealistic view of the courtroom because they've seen trials on television and film, so they think they're experts. A lot of times, what they consider a true performance is often a trial disaster waiting to happen.
Well, here's one problem defending celebrities. The courtroom is a very strange, counterintuitive place. Things happen in courtrooms that don't happen outside of courtrooms. A courtroom, first of all, is a very sterile, very threatening place. You don't see children playing in a courtroom. You don't see a lot of fun things. It's very, very solemn, very serious, very cold. And what happens in a courtroom is not really reality. It's a reconstruction of reality. We need a justice system. We have to do something to make sure there's justice in society. So we have certain rules and procedures. The lawyers have to follow those rules and procedures, and reality that happens somewhere else at some other time is reconstructed in the courtroom. And a lot of trials are sensationalized on television. You have TV shows, you have movies, you have books, you have all sorts of not so realistic ways of portraying a courtroom. So people in the entertainment business very often think they know what happens in the courtroom because of the shows they've seen, the movies they've seen, the novels they've read. And it may have very little to do with what really happens. Let me give you an example. Jermaine Jackson, Michael's brother, wrote a book about Michael. And Jermaine Jackson, who came to his criminal trial periodically, was there a lot, he writes in the beginning of his book that we weren't sure what was going on because every night during that 5-month trial, we would look at the news and they would say the prosecution is winning. And then we would talk to his lead lawyer, Tom Mesereau, who would say we're doing fine. And we weren't quite sure how to process this. Well, they were looking at sound bites on TV. You have a jury looking at 8 hours of evidence throughout a day, morning, noon, and into the evening. And then you have an entertainment program summarizing what happened in a few sound bites. So there's no way those few sound bites are going to accurately portray what's going on in a courtroom or what's important in a courtroom. So I was basically, although you can never know what a jury is thinking or what they're going to do, I was pretty optimistic. We were doing a very excellent job. And as Jermaine said, we turn on the TV and they'd say it's a disaster for the defense, another disaster today for the defense.
Right.
Well, what happened was a number of the reporters would look at a prosecution witness. The prosecutor would put that witness on. The witness would say something that appeared damaging to the defense. The reporter would run out of the courtroom and report it. They wouldn't look at the cross-examination when we obliterated that witness with all sorts of provable lies, provable contradictions. So how the media chooses to portray a courtroom or a trial is very often has nothing to do with what's really going on. They're just reconstructing what they think is important, reconstructing what they think is dramatic, will help their ratings, will help generate controversy, and you can't necessarily trust it.
Right. I think a lot of I think you mentioned this as well, that a lot of celebrities feel that if they win in the court of public opinion, they'll somehow win in the trial itself, which a lot of times is just not true at all, which is why you see a lot of people who have open cases doing interviews and putting information out there, which ends up being used against them.
Well, you want to focus on what's going to happen in the courtroom because that's the most important place. The most important people are 13 people, a judge and 12 jurors. They are the most important. And yes, do you want good information outside in the atmosphere, on the media, on the airwaves? Of course you do. Would you like people saying good things about you? Of course. Could that affect a jury pool? Yes, it could. But let me say this. I think jurors in America really follow their oath. And a judge will put a jury under oath in a courtroom. He will tell them to follow his or her instructions. They are not to follow any media reporting on the trial, on the case. And he will tell them to avoid newspapers. And he will tell them only to focus on what's in the courtroom. And I think jurors do their best to follow the judge's instructions. I think American juries tend to be very independent and don't want to be manipulated, don't want to be, basically abused by media coverage. Let me mention the Michael Jackson jury, for example. We had about a 5-month trial. I thought we did a very good job. During the 8 days of jury deliberation, all the major networks were showing a jail cell where they claimed he was going to be. And they were talking about how he would spend his time in jail when he was convicted. They were talking about what time he would get up, what he would wear, what he could eat, would he have reading material, would visitors be allowed to see him, could he pray? I mean, this was going on every day, and in my opinion, this was a blatant attempt to influence the jury, and it didn't work.